In tonight's news, snow blocks roads in the kingdom, causing havoc as a polar front lashes the region. The foreign minister says the war on terrorism is Jordan's war and calls for a crackdown on funding of extremist organizations in the fight against terrorism. And the US president calls for strengthened non-military measures to combat terrorism. Good evening and very warm welcome to the news. Snow and heavy rain hit many regions across the kingdom as a polar front with gusty winds began lashing the region this evening. Thick accumulations of snow were reported in the northern Ajloon highlands and elevations in the centre and south of the country, blocking roads and causing traffic havoc. Temperatures had significantly dropped and are expected to plummet further tonight to the freezing point and even below. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour directed all authorities to be on a state of high alert and asked citizens to deal with awareness and be responsible during the exceptionally harsh weather which might cause power cuts. The government had declared a holiday today due to the severe weather conditions and advised the public to stay indoors and not to hamper the work of emergency crews. Schools and banks were closed as the Civil Defence Department and other security agencies issued instructions on safety precautions, while municipal crews were on standby to open roads and deal with weather-related incidents. The Greater Amman municipality has a contingency plan and put its crews and machinery on the ready. The Queen Alia International Airport also introduced an emergency plan and urged passengers to check for updates on their flights. People in Amman and other cities were stocking up on supplies as long queues formed at bakeries and shopping malls. His Majesty the King ordered that public schools across the kingdom be supplied with central heating in a project that will be carried out on stages. The order is added to other royal initiatives to develop education and improve conditions for learning throughout the education process. 50 schools are incorporated in the initial stage of the heating project as a personal donation by His Majesty the King. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour received a delegation from the National Democratic Institute for International Affairs and reviewed the latest developments in the Middle East. Mansour told the visiting delegation that Jordan is pressing ahead with the national comprehensive reform programs in the political, economic and social domains. Despite the regional turmoil and the war on terrorism, Jordan will continue to bolster democracy and public freedom, the Prime Minister said. The government, he added, will soon present the decentralization and municipalities draft laws to the Parliament for debate, while noting that the elections law would follow later. The government is currently implementing a 4-year economic program, Mansour said, and added that it is giving the final touches to a 10-year economic plan ordered by His Majesty the King. The Prime Minister also received the head of the Kuwait Red Crescent Society, Khilal As-Sayr. They discussed the aid and humanitarian programs being implemented by the society to serve the Syrian refugees in Jordan. Mansour underlined the depth of ties between Jordan and Kuwait, praising the Gulf Arab state over its support of Jordan. Mansour also spoke about the extra burdens being borne by the kingdom as a result of hosting hundreds of thousands of Syrian refugees. Foreign Minister Nasser Jude said the war on terrorism is Jordan's war and the kingdom had to defend itself and Islam against extremist ideology. He told the White House-sponsored anti-terrorism summit in Washington that Jordan is no stranger to terror and had made historic sacrifices as it lost many of its sons and would continue to fend off the peril of terror. He said that terrorists are operating in many regions under many names and recognize no boundaries and spare no religions, cultures or ethnicities. Jude said the world cannot tolerate this threat to go unchecked and stressed that the root causes of terrorism should be addressed. Jude also stressed the need to crack down on funding to terrorist organizations, including illicit oil sales, donations, charity organizations, ransoms, trafficking of antiquities, and the ability to utilize technology.
The war against extremism and radical ideology is our war. And we must defend ourselves, our faith, and our values of tolerance and moderation, and anyone who supports this ideology or tries to justify it is our enemy. These are not my words. These were the words of His Majesty King Abdullah II a few months ago. Historic sacrifices have been made by Jordan, as they have been made by many other countries. Our founding monarch, King Abdullah I, fell victim to terror. We've lost prime ministers, we've lost innocent civilians. I, in the foreign minister of Jordan, have lost diplomats way before terrorism and extremism hit our region in the way that we see it today. His Majesty the King defined the current global challenge we are facing today as a third world war by other means. And why is that? In describing the reality today, we have foreign fighters fighting along extremist organizations, particularly the most notorious Daesh, from approximately 90 nationalities, all potential terrorists in their own countries when they return. They operate today in all continents and fight within many terrorist organizations under different names: Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, and of course the most infamous Daesh. And they are confronted today, as we speak, by over 60 countries, and I would imagine they are confronted by the international community at large. So the threat the world is facing today is unprecedented, and violent extremism has become a harsh reality. It recognizes no boundaries, no religion, no culture, no ethnicity. It spares no religion, no culture, no ethnicity.
Also at the White House Summit on Countering Violent Extremism in Washington, D.C., U.S. President Barack Obama called for strengthened non-military measures to combat terrorism. During a speech, Obama noted challenges in countering violent extremism, including addressing the economic and political grievances that terrorists exploited. He stressed that the fight against terrorism is not only a matter of military affairs. The president also added that extremist cyberspace propaganda targeting youth people is a worldwide problem.
We have to be honest with ourselves. Terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIL deliberately target their propaganda in the hopes of reaching and brainwashing young Muslims, especially those who may be disillusioned or wrestling with their identity. That's the truth. The high-quality videos, the online magazines, the use of social media, terrorist Twitter accounts, it's all designed to target today's young people online in cyberspace.
The United States and Turkey have reached a tentative agreement to train and equip moderate Syrian opposition fighters. Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu said he expected the pact to be signed soon. The U.S. military said it is planning to send more than 400 troops, including Special Operations Forces, to train Syrian moderates at sites outside Syria as part of the fight against Daesh terrorists. 3 U.S. officials who were not identified said the training could begin in mid-March. They said the moderate Syrian fighters would be equipped with items including pickup trucks with mounted machine guns, radios and global positioning system trackers. And in Syria, battles in and around the northern city of Aleppo have killed at least 70 pro-government fighters and more than 80 insurgents after the army started an offensive there. Video uploaded to a social media website showed rebel fighters of a Shamia front in the middle of clashes with regime forces supported by Hezbollah militants fighting for what is said to be Al-Mallah farmland. Insurgents later claimed that they took full control of the farmland after the battle took place. The video shows that what is said to be a group of Shamia fighters advancing, while some of them appear to support their colleagues by exchanging fire with regime forces shooting from the other side. A second video showed the bodies of dozens of dead pro-government soldiers and members of Hezbollah on the ground. The US-led coalition staged 15 new airstrikes on Daesh terrorists in Iraq and Syria. The combined joint task force said 5 of the strikes were around the Syrian town of Kobani and destroyed 8 fighting positions and 2 checkpoints. 2 strikes also were staged near Al-Hasaka in Syria. 8 airstrikes near 6 Iraqi towns hit fighting positions, tactical units, a weapons storage facility, vehicles and buildings. Meantime, Iraq's defense ministry released a video showing the country's security forces on the outskirts of al-Baghdadi, a town largely held by Daesh terrorists. It showed Iraqi security forces in the neighboring Ain al-Assad base monitoring the activities in al-Baghdadi. About 320 U.S. Marines are training members of the Iraqi 7th Division at the base. France complained that its European allies were not doing enough to help fight terrorism and instability in Africa. With Daesh now present in Libya and Boko Haram posing a threat to countries in West Africa, Paris demanded a fairer sharing of the burden. At an EU defence ministers meeting in the Latvian capital, France's defence minister appealed for other European countries to make a greater commitment to security in Africa. Earlier at the United Nations, Libya and Egypt asked the Security Council to lift an arms embargo on Libya and help it build the army so it can tackle Daesh and other extremist groups. UN Special Envoy Bernardino Leon told the group that Daesh and other militants in Libya can only be defeated with a united government in place that has strong international support.
Defeating terrorism in Libya can only be achieved through the political and institutional determination of a united Libyan government, which will need the strong and unequivocal support from the international community in confronting the myriad challenges facing Libya.
To the world of style, a day before Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week concludes in New York, design duo carrying Craig and Georgina Chapman of fashion label Marquesa presented their fall 2015 collection. Their inspiration was the decadent period of early 20th century that they called Opium Dreams. Poppy was the theme of the day, with red silk organza flowers adorning tops, skirts and gowns. Sometimes in the form of embroideries, shimmering tops were paired with sharply tailored trousers. A model in light grey tulle gown with fringe detail seemed to embody a plume of billowing smoke, while a red cascading dress was masterfully draped to transform its wearer into the giant poppy flower. Brazilian João Sousa overcame a challenge by Slovenian Blaž Rola on the clay in Rio de Janeiro. The home crowd showed their colours as they cheered on Sousa to a 3-set win, 6-4, 6-7, 6-4. Sousa will play Andreas Haidamora in the third round. The Austrian ousted Spaniard Tommy Roberto earlier in the day, 6-3, 6-2. Real Madrid coach Carlo Ancelotti told journalists Real Madrid did a great job after a 2-0 last 16 win against Schalke 04, saw Cristiano Ronaldo ending a goal drought. The Portuguese World Player of the Year had not scored for 3 games. Ronaldo headed in after 26 minutes for his 73rd Champions League goal with Real's first chance, and he set up Marcelo to make it 7 wins for the Spanish side in 7 Champions League games this season and 10 in a row. And former Belgian cyclist Claude Craig-Leon, who was world champion in 1984, died at age 58. Craig-Leon had suffered a stroke and a severe brain hemorrhage. He started his professional career in 1979, coming 9th in the Tour de France, and he raced until 1991 for teams including Lotto. He finished in the top 10 of the Tour de France 5 times. Finally, a look at the weather forecast. Cold tonight in most regions with hail, thundery downpours forecast for much of the country. Snow is also expected across much of the hilly areas, covering areas lying 600 meters above sea level and maybe across altitudes less than that. Winds tonight will be westerly brisk, turning gusty at times. Cold, rainy and snowy weather will continue to affect the country tomorrow with gusty winds. The port of Aqaba should expect rainy weather as well, with westerly to northerly moderate winds and choppy seas. The weatherman warns of flash floods in low-lying areas and poor or zero visibility across many areas due to blowing snow and fog. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To close our top stories, once again. Snow blocks roads in the kingdom, causing havoc as a polar front lashes the region. The foreign minister says the war on terrorism is Jordan's war and calls for a crackdown on funding of extremist organizations in the fight against terrorism. And the US president calls for strengthened non-military measures to combat terrorism. And that's the end of tonight's news. My name is Raad Lubtouj. Thank you so much for your company.